I would say that there is not a bigger trap whenever it comes to deck building than whenever it comes to game changers. With the bracket system being out for just under a year now, I have found that one of my least favorite things to have come out of it is the game changers list itself, and it's probably not for the reasons that you think. To start with the positives, yes, I like that we have cards that are, as a community, more or less seen as powerhouse cards, put into their own subtype that is sectioned off in the more competitive ends of the Commander bracket system, as I'm sure a lot of casual players don't want to see Rhystic Study or Smothering Tithe every game. And while I do like this aspect of it, what I have truly come to dislike is the new thought process I have seen whenever it comes to adding game changers to decks. To really try and show my stance, let's say that you have a generic bracket 2 deck, it's fun, it's slow, and you want to take it to the next level and move it to a more competitive bracket 3 deck. What's the first thing that you think to add to it? While I'm sure some of you have some niche cards that make this commander good, I would say that a majority of players almost now default to think of game changers as the very first step of elevating a deck from bracket 2 to 3. And I also don't think that this is the player's fault for thinking this way, it's more of an effect of the game changers list existing. And I know that some of you are saying that game changers are just a staple of bracket 3, as we can even see that the description of the bracket calls for high quality cards. But my biggest gripe comes to the line before it, where a bracket 3 focuses on strong synergy in a deck, and I think that game changers can actually take away from players finding that synergy. Let's say that for instance you're playing a Frodo deck and you want to take it from bracket 2 to 3 and immediately think of some game changers. You see that your 1 mana commander is almost always going to be played on turn 1, so looking at a turn 2 Draenith Magistrate would be a great synergy. And in my opinion, while on paper this might be a synergy, this will almost never pan out as good as you think. Most Frodo decks are, believe it or not, trying to play like Frodo from the Lord of the Rings series, trying to blend into the background, not drawing the attention of Sauron, or in this example the other players, before out of nowhere pushing for an instant kill win. Playing a turn 2 Draenith Magistrate does the complete opposite of this. Yes, I'll give it to you, on paper you're having a great synergy, being able to be the only person to probably have your commander out, but the synergy stops there, because now every player wants to take Draenith out, and in turn take you out for causing this disturbance to their game plan. And this isn't a unique mindset whenever it comes to Frodo. I would say around half of EDH decks want to lay back, go under the radar while they get some of their key pieces out, and then push for a win when no one is expecting it. But game changers, when added by default, take this aspect out of decks completely and force you into the spotlight. Game changers have sort of this new reputation of being cards that need to be noted whenever are played, so whenever you throw something out like a Rhystic Study or a Smothering Tithe, people are going to take notice. But now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that game changers can't make decks better or do what they want. Take the new Firelord Zuko and Ghost Spider commanders. These cards specifically care about casting spells from exile, and so a card like Jessica's Will is a game changer that will feed right into that game plan. But I would say that game changers like this are few and far between, as most people play game changers as just generic powerhouse cards. While Smothering Tithe is a great card in treasure decks, I'm sure we all know it's just a powerful card in any white deck. The same can go for Jessica's Will, where you don't even need to be in a Exile Matters deck for it to do its thing and help you power out your deck. And so there's this big separation when deck building, when deciding if a game changer is just generic value or if it's actually adding to your game plan. And I think to really understand this, we need to break down game changers on a fundamental level. To me, game changers can be broken into 2 different categories: your value over time cards and your instant reward cards. Value over time has these staples like Rhystic Study, Smothering Tithe, Consecrated Sphinx, cards that are going to give you more value the longer they are on the board. And then of course the instant reward section is made up of tutors, win cons, and I would even consider fast mana spells that come in clutch as a one-time use most of the time. But of course, I would not say that these categories are black and white, as a card like the One Ring will give you an instant reward of having protection until your next turn, while also giving you value over time, giving you lots and lots of card draw. And now I would say that confidently that most bracket 3 decks are hyper focused on the value over time cards, which in my opinion are killing decks. Putting the price difference aside, I would say that the average Frodo deck would rather have the card Teferi's Protection than Draenith Magistrate or Smothering Tithe. Draenith, as we said, is going to lock most of the other players out of casting their commander, and Smothering Tithe is usually going to make so many treasures that both of these cards are drawing the attention of the table. While whenever we take a look at a card like Teferi's Protection is going to be a timely piece that we use to keep our board safe and hopefully go for a kill on our next turn. 2 of these cards making it harder for us to stay under the radar, in turn making it harder for us to get Frodo up to that instant kill ability, and the other one protects us while we have it built up and sets us up for a win safely. Of course, not saying that Draenith Magistrate or Smothering Tithe are bad cards, but I am saying that different decks call for different game changers. Because while I do think that Smothering Tithe is an overplayed card in a lot of bracket 3 white decks, I do actually think that it can be a powerful and useful card in a mono white Avacyn deck that really needs that extra help mana wise. But now compare that to someone putting Smothering Tithe into a Cloud X Soldier deck. As Cloud itself is going to make treasures whenever your game plan is online, so Smothering Tithe isn't really adding anything to your deck that you're not already doing. The only thing it's actually doing is drawing more attention to yourself, making you a bigger threat in everyone else's mind. So now looking back at Avacyn and at Cloud, I hope that you can see my reasoning for why I think Smothering Tithe is a really valid add to one bracket 3 deck versus not so much for the other. And so now to circle all the way back to the other game changers, the reason that I split game changers into two different groups is because I think that a general consensus is that people now just lump game changers into the same level power-wise, when game changers vary in power significantly from deck to deck. Some game changers you're going to have to build around, or be in a deck that is hyper-focused on what it does well. Crop rotation in an ideal scenario will let you sack a basic land and throw in a powerhouse land right onto the battlefield. But in actuality, unless you are building around land sacrifice as a game plan, you are probably sacking a basic to get a Triome out and color fix if you throw it into the average green deck. And like I said before, the big thing is to find game changers that match with game plans like Jessica's Will in a deck like Fire Lord Zuko or Bolas' Citadel in a life gain deck. The issue I find now is that people neglect actual synergistic cards to have game changers in bracket 3. As whenever it comes to people upgrading things like precons or just their bracket 2 decks, it almost becomes a thing where they have to add a game changer for it to be validated as a bracket 3, which I think is just really unhealthy whenever it comes to a deck building mindset. Game changers are just notable cards that are inherently powerful, mostly because they just have generic value. Rhystic Study and Smothering Tithe are such good cards because they fit into any deck in their colors really well. But now that's the biggest gripe I have with just this auto-include mindset whenever it comes to game changers. As in a format designed to show oneself with things like Universes Beyond and just pet cards, I don't like this auto-include mindset whenever it especially comes to game changers and just feeling like you have to throw them into your bracket 3. But game changers aren't bad, they aren't ruining the format, and they are not ruining bracket 3. The real problem is just the mindset that they created. The idea that power is something you insert into your deck instead of something that you cultivate inside of the deck's identity. Putting in 3 cards that are going to consistently add to your game plan, in my opinion, are going to help you stay under the radar at a commander table and are overall going to get you the same level of power as throwing in just 3 random game changers. Because decks don't become bracket 3 because you just stuffed in a handful of expensive staples. Decks become bracket 3 because you make their engine tighter, you make the lines to win a lot cleaner, and their synergies are more intentional. Game changers are a tool to do this, but they are not a shortcut. Because whenever you do treat them like a shortcut, you're going to end up with a deck that is technically stronger on paper, but is going to play dramatically worse in most cases. If you're really wanting to elevate your deck's power level, don't start by asking which game changers can I add. Start by asking what does my deck actually want to do and which cards can help it do that better. Sometimes the answer to this question is and can be a game changer. But more times than not, I would argue that you can get a similar power level with a whole lot more synergy if you don't think about just game changers. Because at the end of the day, synergy is what usually wins games, and whenever you choose the right cards for the right deck, that's when your deck truly levels up.